It started on a Sunday morning, the kind where the sun peeks through the blinds like it's trying to give you a hug, where the air smells like dew and freshly cut grass, and the neighborhood seems too perfect to be real. But in our neighborhood, perfect always came with a price. That price had a name. Karen. Now, I don't like to throw that name around lightly, but if you saw what I saw that day, you'd understand why there's no other word for her. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was a one-woman neighborhood surveillance team, judge, jury, and executioner of every so-called HOA rule. From mailbox heights to lawn chaise, if it didn't match her vision of suburbia, it didn't belong. Now, wife Leah and I had only moved into the neighborhood 2 months ago. We thought we'd found a slice of peace, a quiet place for our family to grow after years of chaotic service life. Leah had just been promoted, a new chapter, a clean slate. But that morning, everything changed. I was on the porch, sipping my coffee, scrolling through my phone when I saw Leah come out in her standard tactical pants, boots. She had her duty belt on, not the full gear, just her sidearm and badge. Just routine. She gave me a quick smile, kissed me on the cheek, and headed to her car. That's when I heard the voice, shrill, commanding like nails on a chalkboard. Excuse me, excuse me. I turned, and there she was, Karen, marching down the sidewalk like she owned every square inch of it. She was talking to Leah. Can't just walk around here with a gun like that. This is a family neighborhood. Leah didn't even flinch. She turned slowly, calm, and collected. I'm on duty, she said, tapping her badge gently. Police Chief Leah Martinez. I'm not here to bother anyone, but Karen didn't even look at the badge. Her eyes were locked on the holster. I don't care who you think you are, she snapped. This is against the HOA guidelines. I'm reporting you. That is a weapon. We don't allow weapons here. Leah raised an eyebrow. The HOA doesn't override state law. I'm well within my rights. Karen scoffed. You people always think the rules don't apply to you, and that's when I stood up. Now, I don't usually get involved. Leah can handle herself. But something about the way Karen said, you people, the way her lips curled, the venom in her tone, it boiled my blood. Karen, I said, keeping my voice steady, you really don't want to do this. She turned to me like I was the backup villain in her personal drama. No, you don't want to do this. I'm calling the cops right now, and don't think your little costume scares me. I watched Leah's hand tighten just slightly on her belt. Not on the weapon on the belt. It was the only tell she had when she was annoyed. Karen dialed 911 right in front of us. No hesitation. And you know what she said? She's armed and walking around like she owns the place. It's a threat. I'll never forget the look on Leah's face. Not fear, not surprise, just like watching someone dig their own grave while insisting they're building a swimming pool. She didn't try to stop Karen. She didn't interrupt when Karen hung up. She looked smug, triumphant. They'll be here soon, she said. Let's see how brave you are when the real cops show up. Leah nodded. Can't wait. Not because of the car, but because of the words stenciled across the side. Down our quiet cul-de-sac, lights flashing but no sirens. The neighborhood was already peeking through blinds. Phones in hand, some filming, some texting. In our street, drama spreads faster than wildfire, and Karen had just lit the match. She stood at the edge of our driveway, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with satisfaction, like she was about to get her big moment. The hero of her own story. And in her mind, my wife was the villain. The officers stepped out, both familiar faces. Officer Ramos and Officer Dunley, good guys, trained by Leah herself. And now, unknowingly, walking into a mess created by the very HOA queen who thought she ran this block, Karen rushed to them like a contestant on a game show, waving dramatically. That's the one, she shouted, pointing at Leah, who was calmly standing beside our cruiser. She has a gun. Right there, in the open. She threatened me. Officer Ramos furrowed his brow. Ma'am, please calm down. No one's threatening anyone. Karen pulled out her phone. I have video. Dunley glanced at Ramos. You could see it in their eyes. Something didn't add up. Not just the claim, but Karen's whole act. She was too eager, too loud, too certain. Ramos turned toward Leah, who stood tall, composed, her badge now clearly visible on her belt. Chief Martinez, he asked. Karen's face dropped. Chief, wait. What? Leah gave a small nod. Morning, boys. Unstable, in the vicinity. We rushed. Unstable, I said, stepping forward. She told dispatch Leah was a threat. Karen's face flushed, but she didn't back down. She said she was the chief. Karen, she's the real chief. Has been for almost 4 months now. Karen blinked. Well, this is legal. You're not above state law, and the HOA doesn't get to decide who's a criminal. Karen scoffed. This is my neighborhood. I know what's safe. You just called in a false report on a law enforcement officer. That's not just irresponsible, it's criminal. And then Karen did what all Karens eventually do when cornered. She doubled down. Oh, please, she said. You probably pulled some diversity card to get your position. They hand badges out like candy now, just so they can look good on paper. That's why you people, Ramos, stepped between them so fast, you'd think he'd teleported, ma'am. Karen opened her mouth to argue for the first time, her voice caught in her throat. The power dynamic had shifted. She was no longer in control. She was no longer the one being heard. That's when Leah pulled out her phone and started recording. Not to post, not to share, but to protect herself. Because people like Karen have a habit of rewriting history the moment things don't go their way. Karen, she said evenly, you just made a false police report about an officer of the law. You escalated a peaceful moment into a scene. You may think your HOA title gives you power, but it doesn't give you immunity. You want to see how authority works? Fine. Let's take this to the station. Karen's jaw dropped. You arresting me? No, Leah said. They are. Officer Dunley gently took Karen by the arm. You're being detained for questioning and possible filing of a false report. You have the right to remain silent, Karen screamed. Loud and shrill, her voice echoing down the street. I'm the victim. This is a setup. I know my rights. But by then, even the neighbors had stopped pretending. Windows were fully open. Cameras were rolling. Karen inside, still ranting. Leah let out a long, quiet breath. But sometimes, people don't understand any other language. I nodded. You didn't flex it. You protected yourself. Leah looked down the street where parents were coming, out to explain things to their kids, where a few neighbors nodded respectfully, where the illusion of Karen's control had finally shattered, and for the first time since we moved in, it felt like we actually lived here. But Karen wasn't finished, because some people don't just come back, they come back worse. We thought that was the end of it. We really did. Karen spent one night in holding, just enough time to get fingerprinted, processed, and, thanks to a generous HOA lawyer, friend bailed out before sunrise. By morning, her pastel porch light was back on, her little yapping Pomeranian barking like it had something to prove, and her SUV parked just slightly too far into our driveway. Again, but something had changed, not in her. In the neighborhood, people kept their distance. Now, the whispered gossip wasn't about us anymore, was about her. And Karen, she could feel it. Losing her grip on the control she'd clutched for years, and like any tyrant on a crumbling throne, she didn't retreat, she retaliated. First came the letters: violation, excessive vehicle presence in driveway violation, visible law enforcement equipment on residential property violation, intimidation of HOA board member, all addressed to my wife. Signed by Karen, stamped with the HOA seal she still had access to, because no one had officially removed her from her self-appointed throne. Leah didn't react. Of unpaid HOA fee reminders that Karen kept increasing with late penalties. You want me to handle this? I asked one night, watching her stir pasta with one hand and flip through a municipal codebook with the other. Nope, she said. I've got a plan. I didn't ask for details. When Leah said she had a plan, you didn't press. Stood back and let the storm come. And oh, did it come. It started when she attended the next HOA meeting. Karen didn't expect her there, dressed in her full uniform, calm, crisp, radiating authority. Leah walked into that community center like she was there to shut down a cartel. Not politely request a parking waiver. Karen stood at the front, like usual, clipboard in hand, speaking into the mic as if she were addressing a courtroom, instead of 12 annoyed neighbors and a folding table full of lukewarm coffee. And as I was saying, Karen said, open carry should be prohibited in family communities. The wrong message to children, especially when it's done by someone in law enforcement trying to make a point. That's when Leah stepped up to the mic. Excuse me, she said, smooth and direct. I'd like to address the board. Karen froze. You could see the wheels spinning in her head. She couldn't stop the meeting. Out every violation, every unlawful fine, every intimidation tactic. She quoted statutes, referenced city policy. She even brought in copies of body cam footage and dispatch logs, showing Karen's false police report, showing her abusive language, showing the entire neighborhood who Karen really was. Then came the final blow. Leah held up a folder. These, she said, are signed complaints from 11 residents requesting a vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership as HOA chair. I'm also submitting a motion backed by city law enforcement to investigate misuse of authority and harassment. But Leah didn't flinch. No. This is accountability, something you've never faced in your life. The room was dead silent. And another, Karen's lips trembled. You people are turning on me. She spat. You think she's one of you? You think she cares about this neighborhood? That's when Mr. Halpern, the 82-year-old veteran who always kept to himself, stood up and said, she's the only one who made it safe. And that was it. Karen stormed out of the meeting, slamming the door so hard it shook the projector screen. We thought that would be the end. We hoped, but a week later, something strange happened. Our mailbox was gone, not vandalism or mold, like someone had unbolted it from the ground and vanished it into thin air. Then our trash cans disappeared. HOA citations said failure to use regulation containers. Our water bill tripled. A leak, they said, and every time, Karen was nowhere in sight. But we knew she wasn't coming at us directly anymore. She was doing what petty people do. When they're too afraid to fight face to face, she was playing dirty. But Leah had grown up fighting bigger wars than this. Karen had no idea the kind of fire she'd just lit. Because my wife was no longer trying to live in the neighborhood, she was about to clean it up. There's a point in every battle when your opponent stops being loud and starts being dangerous. That's where we were with Karen. No more threats at HOA meetings. She'd gone silent, and in that silence, she was planning. It wasn't just our mailbox or our trash cans. It was the subtle things. The cameras pointed at our house. The city permits mysteriously delayed. The new HOA subcommittee that formed overnight, with Karen's best friends appointed without any vote. It was warfare, but in paperwork. And then came the final straw. One Thursday morning, Leah left early for a city safety workshop she was leading downtown. I stayed back, working from home. Around 10 a.m., I saw 3 HOA board members I didn't recognize, walking toward our property with clipboards, measuring wheels, and a contractor. They weren't here to fix anything, they were here to inspect. I walked out onto the porch. Can I help you? The woman in front barely looked up. Routine HOA property compliance check. We've received several complaints. I laughed. Complaints about what? Exterior modifications, security cameras, landscaping beyond regulation. Our landscaping, it was 2 flower beds and a trimmed hedge. That's when I saw the papers in their hands. Karen's handwriting, her signature, dozens of photos zoomed in, angled to look like violations. A smear campaign disguised as community safety. I called Leah. She didn't pick up. She was in a seminar. I knew better than to panic, but something about the way these strangers walked around our yard like they owned it, it made my skin crawl. Then one of them muttered something. Heard the chief's little badge might not last long. That's when I realized they weren't just coming after our house, they were coming after her job. Karen had filed a complaint with the city council, accusing Leah of using her position to intimidate civilians and inappropriately displaying firearms in residential spaces. A desperate, paper-thin lie. But in politics, even lies can stain a reputation. That night, Leah came home. Quiet. She placed her keys on the table, slowly, sat down, pulled off her boots. I asked her, "You okay?" She nodded. Then said something I'll never forget. They want to play power games. Let's remind them what real power looks like. The next morning, everything changed. Leah showed up to City Hall not just as chief but with backup. 3 community leaders, 2 state representatives, 1 civil rights attorney, and a folder. That folder held evidence, pages of harassment, illegally altered HOA documents, misuse of neighborhood funds, a quiet little slush fund Karen had set up under a bogus HOA. Landscaping vendor known by her cousin in another state. Leah didn't just present her case, she dismantled. Karen Dot, in front of a full council, with reporters in the back, she laid bare. What had been happening in our neighborhood for years, the fear, the manipulation, the control. And when she was done, there was nothing left for Karen to hide behind. The council launched an emergency audit of the HOA. Karen was suspended indefinitely. 2 of her friends were arrested for fraud, and the city issued a public apology to Leah for allowing the harassment to go unchecked by the weekend. New letters were posted on every doorstep. Notice of HOA restructuring, effective immediately. Interim President Chief Leah Martinez. Yeah, you heard that right. My wife, the same woman Karen tried to humiliate, to intimidate, to erase, was now in charge, and she didn't take the role for power. She took it to protect people like us, people who just wanted peace, who didn't have a badge, who didn't have a voice. Under her, the HOA changed fast. No more arbitrary fines, no more bogus citations, no more bullying behind closed doors. Karen tried to fight back, of course, filed one last lawsuit from her lawyer's office out of state, but no one showed up in court on her behalf, because when people finally see someone stand up to the bully, they stop being afraid, and without fear, Karen had nothing left to hold on to. She moved out quietly, late one night, didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, just vanished. Her pastel house was on Zillow the next week, listed as charming fixer-upper with history. History, all right, the kind no one wanted to inherit, and now? Kids ride their bikes freely. The silence isn't tense. Anymore, it's peaceful because Leah didn't just defend herself, she transformed the neighborhood. And Karen